just a bit of lip. That's all I gave him. But he couldn't stand it. He touched the point of the kitchen knife to the soft part just behind my chin and pressed. The skin gave way slightly, but did not break. He knew all about skin, tissue, meat. The pain rose to the base of my tongue. I hated him. Head chef, chief bastard, the worst of the many I'd worked with in my casual career. A caricature in rotundity, he sweated through the late nights in a mood that fluctuated between scorn and rage. If we were late to pick up or screwed up an order, he approached the hot plate, eyeballed the offender, and emitted pure contempt. And the knife, lodged in his waistband, rarely used to cut food, he flashed it within inches of our eyes. Having tolerated this shit for 5 weeks over a summer holiday, I planned my revenge. He should have thought about it. People like me are just passing through to better things. We're not going to spend our whole lives here. He swore like the uncultured bastard he was, and that was my way in. 2 doors separated the kitchen from the restaurant proper, so his foul outpourings were restricted to the ears of his minions. He didn't even own the place, but acted as though he did. On the first night of my campaign, I walked back into the kitchen, having served a table of 5. I slipped a folded napkin under the first door, held the second open with my toe, and said, "Chef, table 12, they want the steaks on in another couple of minutes." I knew he hated this. It was like lighting a fuse. Well, the fuckers ordered rare, that's what I gave them. Blood, rare. But they don't like it, it's too rare. What? I said it's too... shut it! I looked back to make sure the first door was still open. It was. The nearest table, not 12, was only a lobbed bread roll away. I cooked more fucking steaks than any of those jumped up fuckers. If they don't want real meat, they shouldn't fucking order it. I could tell the restaurant had fallen quiet. He couldn't. He was in his own fog of self-justified ire. The small, suited figure of the manager, Peter, appeared behind me. He was waving his arms, mouthing silently, "Be quiet, be quiet!" He kicked the napkin out of the door and waited for the spring to close it. Then, "What are you doing, Chris? What the hell do you think you are doing? Everyone can hear you." I stood still. Peter looked up at me and asked, "What's this about?" I told him. Peter approached Chris and said, in the calm voice one uses with an imbecilic but highly talented footballer who is an essential member of the campaign, "You're right, Chris. I agree with you, absolutely. They don't know what they're on about. But please, please be careful. Keep it down during service. Please." As Peter walked back into the glare of the restaurant, he asked me, "Who jammed this door open?" I shook my head and shrugged. When I got home at 2 in the morning, I wrote 3 letters from made-up people addressed to the owner, complaining that their meals had been ruined by someone swearing at the top of their voice in the kitchen. I posted them from 3 different districts on the way into work the following afternoon. So easy. Second stage. I had to get him out there, in front of the punters, in full flow. He had changed his attitude towards me, a bit more cagey, a lot more suspicious, but just as nasty. I walked in halfway through service and explained to the sous chef, "Table 9, they want to change their order." This wasn't true, but I had only another week before I went back to college. Who cared if I was found out? The sous chef, Lewis, looked at the order hanging from the rack. "There are 6, and they all ordered steaks." "Is that a problem?" "They're already on the grill. Yes, it's a big fucking problem, $1,000 fucking problem." "What's up?" called Chris from the other side of the kitchen. "You tell him," suggested Lewis. I told him. His complexion changed from pink to puce, like a raspberry Kool-Aid stirred with a dash of balsamic vinegar. God knows what his blood pressure was. I feared for him getting out of his 40s. He stood still for half a minute, then made up his mind. The 2 doors gave way to his thick-heeled palms like Japanese screens. Lewis turned back into the kitchen, shaking his head. I followed Chris into the restaurant. He headed for table 9. I noticed just before he turned the tap on that the owner, Mr. Brewer, was standing next to Peter. He had evidently popped in to see what was going on following my letters. He, Peter, and I followed Chris with our eyes across the room. He stood by the table and began. I understand you have changed your orders. The guests were bewildered and looked at one another. Chris continued. I think I should explain something to you. Placing an order is like making a contract. You choose something, we prepare it, you eat it, you pay. The food isn't delivered by magic, we buy it for money. He dipped his head to the level of an elderly, distinguished lady. The heat coming off his face evidently disturbed her. She tried to say, but she could not stop him. And the work we do in there, the skill that we bring, we turn that dead food into something you want to eat, something delicious. I was confused. The only eloquence I had heard from him was from the gutter. You eat it, you pay, you forget. I put everything into that little thing, that trivial little morsel, and what do we make out of it? What's the margin? He turned his red-rimmed, steam-burned eyes to another diner. Fuck all. Yes, that's right. Fuck all. A sliver of shit. $25. And that was all he could say, because Mr. Brewer had grabbed his shoulder and was pulling him back. He was fired on the spot. I watched him slope back into the kitchen. He peeled the damp apron from his gut, phoned someone on his mobile, and sat in the fresh air outside the delivery door, smoking. Lewis completed the service. The kitchen was silent. I stepped out to see what Chris was doing. His wife had come to pick him up. She brought with her a sleeping baby and a pair of 4 or 5-year-olds, twins, drowsy in their pajamas. One of the older ones looked out of the car window. The car was a wreck. And while she took her place next to him on the dirty step,